Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh-Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. US envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner join high-stakes Gaza ceasefire talks as pressure mounts for a breakthrough. French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu presents his plan to Macron tonight, aiming to pass a budget and ease election fears. Visa rules and Bollywood opportunities are on the table as Keir Starmer visits India to boost trade and also investment. Now, US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner are joining high-stakes Gaza ceasefire talks in Egypt. Their arrival comes as negotiations between Israel and Hamas remain deadlocked, with key issues like Israeli withdrawal and post-war governance unresolved. Hamas says both delegations have exchanged a list of prisoners and hostages to be released if a deal is indeed agreed. For more on this, I'm joined from Jerusalem by Ruby Shen, father of Itai Shen, an Israeli-American hostage in Gaza. It's really good to speak to you again. Thank you so much for joining us. Yesterday marked 2 years since October the 7th. It has been 732 days since you last spoke to your son. What was that moment like for you yesterday when you reflected on 2 years since October the 7th?
Yeah, it was a mixed bag of emotions. Like we had the decision to stay together as a family. We debated to be in Washington, D.C. or some other place. And we stayed here in Israel with the talks that we have seen that have come together in Egypt that provides us some cautious optimism. We have been advocating a long time for having the main leading figures in one place hashing out a deal. And that is what is happening now with the backing of the President of the United States, as well as his top team, Mr. Steve Witkoff, as well as also having Jared Kushner part of the team as well, which I think is a very positive development.
And let's just talk a bit more about those talks that are ongoing in Egypt. Hamas negotiators have exchanged lists of prisoners and hostages who would be released. Does this bring you and other hostage families some hope?
Yes, I think that there's been enough suffering. There should not be a competition where more suffering is, if it is us or the people of Gaza that has been held as human shields by this terrorist organization. And it's unfortunate, but we, the simple people, we are collateral damage for bigger political issues. And I hope to believe that our tragedy and this humanitarian crisis will be decoupled from the bigger issues that have been going on for decades. And with the president and his plan, he indeed wished to decouple by putting at the first phase the release of all the hostages, as well as bringing in humanitarian aid into Gaza.
Throughout this process, have you and other hostage families been offered support from the Israeli government and from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu? What has that looked like for you yourself?
Yeah, so we also have that support from the U.S. government as being a U.S. citizen. My wife is also a German citizen, so actually Itai is a U.S., German, Israeli citizen. And the Prime Minister, I'm sure, wants to bring the hostages back. Like, he was the Prime Minister on October 7th, and he is responsible for this, and he does have an obligation. It's just unfortunate that within the war objectives that his government put in place, there were a number of war objectives, including the release of the 251 hostages. And when you have a number of objectives, they don't always coincide and sit on the same timeline. And that is why, unfortunately, we are sitting here 2 years after without getting all the hostages back.
So do you think Benjamin Netanyahu has done enough over this 2 years to get the hostages back and your loved ones? or not?
Well, the bottom line is no, because it hasn't happened. But, he's not the only one on the playing field. There's also Hamas, that is a terrorist organization that did, atrocities on October 7th and have been using hostages as a leverage. I think anyone listening to us now would agree that taking dead people and using them as negotiation chips is something that not the Islam religion or any religion adheres to. And I think that the international community should have been maybe more forceful in condemning those types of acts and allowing at least the part about the hostages to be put aside, and then continue talking about what the future of Gaza and the Palestinians would look like.
And just a little bit for you personally, what has the last 2 years been like? And what will it be once this hostage release happens? How much relief will that possibly give you? Or where will that put your life in the future?
Yeah, that's a very complex question, which, a psychologist would spend a number of sessions discussing that. But trying to be concise, I think that, the feeling is that we got suspended and moved to another dimension on October 7th. And since then, we've been kind of in an ongoing day that has been going on for 2 years. And we have been in a different process because our life has been suspended. And just think about any family dinner, holiday dinner, that we have a missing chair at our table. And it's unfortunate, but again, going to Hamas, they have not provided, to this moment, acknowledgement that Itai is in their possession and B, what his physical status is. That is kind of the lowest type of psychological warfare and terrorism that you can inflict on any family. And again, I know the mediators have tried to get that type of information, but we have not been provided that information to date, even though that it is supported by international law. When there are missing people in areas of conflict, there are some basic components that you need to adhere to, even if you are a non-state entity, which is backed by the UN Security Council. And we, as a family, have been kind of out of touch with many people and have just been focused on this fight. And it's unfortunate that it is a fight, because I thought it would be obvious that this is the first thing that should be figured out. And we shouldn't be standing here 2 years after still waiting in hope that our loved ones will be returned, including my son.
Ruby Shen, thank you so much for speaking to us, and as always, sending a lot of well wishes to yourself and your family.
Thank you. God bless.
Let's continue this conversation with international affairs analyst and former BBC Arabic editor, Dr. Fouad Razek. It's a pleasure to have you on, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining us. So it's the third day of indirect talks in Egypt, and key US and regional mediators have now arrived in Sharm el-Sheikh. With the big hitters there, will this add more momentum for a deal?
Thank you, Leigh-Ann, very much for hosting me. Actually, what you refer to as those heavyweight dignitaries and people of high profile attending the meeting, that will add definitely a sort of moral pressure on all parties to reach a deal. The problem now, we have some key words, like the word guarantees now, and the crisis of trust. Trust is not there between the two parties concerned here, and the guarantees, the way the Hamas and the Palestinians see it, as a way it's only verbal so far. They need something in writing. They need something of a plans and something of a time frame for anything, not only for these things, but for the withdrawal from Gaza. And only given now the word of mouth by Mr. Trump or Netanyahu or the people attending there. Everybody is, looking for reaching a breakthrough in this, at least for the first phase. Everybody is keen to make some progress on the first phase, and after that, let be what it may be. And that what makes, Hamas people are, concerned about this, because once they hand over the hostages, and then maybe the sky will put havoc on them, and will be a restart of the war. How far they can believe Mr. Trump that won't happen is a big question mark. So we are in the stage of, if there is a will, there is a way. But as you said, with all high-ranking people, it's difficult, to go empty-handed for any party involved in this. So even some words like cautious optimism, and I don't know how far can one be optimistic within the same thing, only relying on the high-ranking people and the ideas put, because in every point of the 20 points Trump plan, there's something hindrance, there is some difficulties going through, even in the terms of names. But some difficulties might be ironed out and reached, like the names of, of the Palestinian prisoners. And in this case, there might be some, compromise on this on the part of Hamas, if it insists on the big names like Barouthi and the others who are on the list. We don't know the response of Israeli party to releasing these big names, although they are not actually from Hamas at all. They are from Fatah and other factions, So there could be a compromise on this on Hamas. So yes, yes, please, yeah.
Doctor, I was actually just going to speak to you about that list and what Hamas has said. Hamas negotiators have exchanged lists of prisoners and hostages who would be released, which includes, as you said, Marwan Barghouti, that prominent Palestinian prisoner. What do you make of this development? Do you think that Israel be willing to do this and that both parties will be able to find a middle ground when it comes to the hostages and to the prisoners?
There should be a compromise, actually, on the part of Israel. But again, at the end of the day, Hamas cannot afford to spoil the whole package just for some names. Especially these names do not belong to Hamas, as I said, So there should be something in there on the part of Israel to do. Because there are so many other sticking issues, that needs to be ironed out to reach the compromise. Everybody is looking for this moment when they see the hostages released. But what's after that? There are so many other issues. But now everybody is concentrating on phase one. And this is in itself, alarming, because once the hostages are released and everything is all right on the first phase, then will come the problems and the details, which might hinder anything else. But because Mr. Trump nowadays, he wants to achieve a breakthrough. He wants to go out to the world and put himself as the peacemaker, and who deserve even Nobel Prize for Peace. Even, President Sisi of Egypt, extended an invitation for Mr. Trump. And this is a good sign, because what he said, even he was optimistic about the way the negotiations are carried out in Sharm el-Sheikh. This adds to the sort of optimism we are talking about. Everybody wants to achieve something, actually, but to what extent and now the pressure would be on Israel because Mr. Trump wants to save Israel from itself, actually, and because they lost a lot on the moral ground and with the acknowledgement of the Palestinian state, which is not even mentioned in the plans, only for later on, and the Palestinian Authority is not actually included at all. So Hamas might have the upper hand now in these negotiations, and he has the key to this, where the other party is absent, or for the time being might come later, but God knows when. And we have Netanyahu saying, over my dead body to reach a Palestinian state or two-state solution. It was buried by him, and he insisting on not having this. So can the negotiations bring them back? Because everybody is watching now. The whole world is watching. The whole world is wishing to put an end to this awful situation in Gaza. So I feel that there should be something, and Hamas really should give in and reach a compromise on these issues. Again, with the withdrawal, how far the Israel withdraw. Netanyahu wants to keep a huge amount of land in Gaza with some 5 important points that might void this of its meaning. But everything is level because at the beginning of any negotiations, everybody put the ceiling very high.
Dr. Fouad Razek, great to have your insights and analysis. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu has been asked to deliver his solutions to President Macron this evening on how to form an administration and also pass a budget. Lecornu resigned on Monday after just 27 days in office, but was given 48 hours to rally support for the new government. The caretaker Prime Minister says there is a will to pass a budget and snap parliamentary elections were now actually looking less likely. For more on this, I'm joined from Paris by our correspondent there, Ross Cullen. Ross, so we discussed this before. Macron gave Lecornu 48 hours to come up with a plan. That time is running out rapidly. What is the mood music out of the Élysée Palace, and is a snap election on the cards?
Yes, Leigh-Ann, I feel as though I'm regularly joining you from this corner outside the Élysée Palace, the French presidential office and residence you can see behind me. And just a few minutes ago, the Prime Minister, Sébastien Lecornu, arrived for perhaps the most crucial meeting of his short career as Prime Minister, and perhaps one of the most important meetings Emmanuel Macron has ever had. The two men will be discussing the way forward. Has Sébastien Lecornu been able to find an exit to the crisis? All of the meetings that he's had today with all of the different parties, has he got a proposal to put on the table that Emmanuel Macron can bring forward? We understand there's the possibility of a left-wing Prime Minister. Is that now going to be the way forward for what is called a cohabitation, where you have a president and a Prime Minister coming from different political ideologies? We also know that Marine Le Pen has said that she will bring votes of no confidence against every single government Emmanuel Macron appoints until he accepts he has to call a general election. She has said a little bit earlier on today, the joke has gone on too long. The left-wing bloc, all of the left-wing parties put together, do have the greatest number of lawmakers. They think it's now fair that they get a chance at being Prime Minister. We will find out in about an hour's time when the Prime Minister exits the Élysée Palace and goes on national television to reveal his plans. Certain to be a lot of reaction this evening about if Emmanuel Macron can stay in post and if he can avoid calling early elections.
Like you said, Ross, Lecornu has been holding talks with key political party leaders, saying there is a willingness to have a budget for France before December. But all of this, what are the key reasons they can't agree on anything when it comes to the budget?
Yeah, that's right, Leigh-Ann. The budget is the crux of all of this. The 2026 spending and saving plan needs to be approved before the end of this year. And all of the different parties have such entrenched position when it comes to financial and fiscal policy. There could be a way forward if there is the possibility of suspending, at the very least, potentially repealing the controversial pension reform of 2023. That's at the heart of so many of the discussions that the opposition politicians have been having with the Prime Minister today. However, the Finance Ministry responded to that today by saying that it's going to cost more than $500 million extra a year to try to deal with the problem if you were to suspend that reform, which raised the retirement age from 62 to 64. So there's that possibility. There are many other things on the table. France has a huge debt. The public deficit is also rising. We have seen such low productivity in France, a very poor performance from the French stock market over the last year or so. So there are many problems with France's financial and fiscal infrastructure that need dealing with. It's just that the parties have such different ideas of how to go about it.
And another issue for Le Cornu is getting the government to agree on the future of New Caledonia. Why has this been causing such a headache, Ross?
Yeah, New Caledonia is a French overseas territory, Leigh-Ann, roughly between Australia and Fiji, home to more than 250,000 people, indigenous Kanaks, and also settlers who have come from mainland France. And there have been referendums in the past that the separatist and independence parties have taken part in, referendums that they've boycotted. There have been problems. There were more than a dozen people killed last year, deadly riots that were sparked by the fact that there was the idea from here in Paris to give more rights to people who were not born in New Caledonia but have moved there since. There then was an agreement this summer to have a new state of New Caledonia, so not an independent country but much more autonomy within the French Republic, and that needs to be signed off before the end of the year. So the Prime Minister has said we need to get a budget through. Also, New Caledonia's new status is left in limbo because it was brought down when Francois Bayrou was ejected from office in September. Nothing has been done on it for a month. The idea is there, but it needs to be signed off in Parliament. So he wants to get a budget through Parliament, and he also wants to get the confirmatory bill for this new state of New Caledonia approved by lawmakers as well. Leigh-Ann?
Ross Cullen in Paris there. Thank you so much for joining us. Now to the latest US news. President Donald Trump is calling for the arrest of Chicago's mayor and Illinois' governor, both Democrats, as his administration prepares to send the National Guard into the city. It comes as Trump's political rival, former FBI Director James Comey, pleaded not guilty today to lying to Congress. Meanwhile, the government shutdown is causing major flight delays, with air traffic controllers working without pay and staffing shortages crippling airports nationwide. I'm now joined from Las Vegas by Republican strategist Amy Tarkanian. Amy, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I just want to start there with National Guard troops arriving near Chicago, which Donald Trump has called a hellhole. This comes despite strong opposition. The president is calling for Chicago's mayor and the governor of Illinois to be jailed. Is this an escalation, do you think?
Well, I think that both sides have some concern that are valid. I don't believe that the mayor and the governor of that state should be jailed. However, I do think that they are slightly delusional on the amount of crime that is still running rampant for the people who live there and that are law-abiding citizens. When you have ICE agents coming in and to do what their job entails is to oversee illegal immigrants and to remove them, and you have protesters who have now overstepped the boundaries of making it a peaceful protest, because that's allowed here in the United States, but they have crossed that boundary and they have actually caused harm to these ICE agents and other police and law enforcement. And so this is a problem. And if you cannot stop that, if you cannot protect those who protect us, then yes, there definitely needs to be some assistance. And that's where President Trump is bringing the National Guard in to tell them enough is enough.
A Reuters and Ipsos poll says 58% of Americans believed armed troops should only be sent in to face external threats. So we're talking about Chicago now when saying it's necessary to go in there as ICE agents and protests are under threat. But is this action really necessary? And do you think the American people actually support it?
Well, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, unfortunately, because once again, if you have local law enforcement and ICE agents that are in doing their job, exactly what they have trained to do, and in order to protect the everyday law-abiding citizen, and you have protesters that are causing harm and causing more violence and targeting these individuals who are supposed to be protecting us, then yes, there does need to be some extra assistance. Because if the mayor and the governor are going to continue to hide their head in the sand and say that everything is better and everything is rainbows and unicorns, that's not going to help. People can see it, people can feel it, and it's not okay to live like that. That's not living. That's actually living in fear. And I think people have had enough of this.
And the former FBI director, James Comey, I just want to get to him. And he's pleaded not guilty to 2 charges in a court in Virginia, as of course you know, Amy. This will now go to trial because he believes he can clear his name. Is Comey going to prove Donald Trump wrong? Is he going to clear his name?
Well, you got to hand it to him. I mean, if you look back historically, there have been a handful of individuals who have lied to Congress, and that's technically a felony when you commit perjury, to Congress. So, but most of these individuals, if not all, have actually just been given a slap on the wrist, so to speak, and have not seen prison time. And so that's where you're seeing now a current administration that is very heavy-handed when it comes to following the law and implementing the law and making sure that nobody squeaks by, no matter who you are. So I think, it's probably wise on Mr. Comey's part to attempt, because he very well may be able to get through just like many of the others have prior to him. But, at the end of the day, I think this is wise on the Trump administration. Whether if he was, as the left like to say, was on the president's vindictive hit list, so to speak, or not, he still lied, and that's perjury, and that's a felony.
And I just want to ask you another thing. There's a lot going on in the US news-wise. Can we just talk a little bit about Amy, I feel like it actually never stops in many respects. So I'm now going to ask you about the government shutdown, because that's still ongoing, and 40% of the federal workforce are currently on unpaid leave. What's the situation? Will these furloughed workers get their pay back after the shutdown ends? Or do you think Donald Trump is going to try to get rid of the dead wood, as he says, and get rid of a lot of these jobs?
Well, it could be a little bit of both. Historically, once again, when we do have the government shut down and both sides can't come to a consensus on how to divvy out the funds and what to continue to fund, it actually started the very first time in 1981. So it's not necessarily a very long history of having a government shutdown. It's still fairly recent, but it has happened under a number of presidents, both Democrat and Republican. And unfortunately, what you see here is you see a game of ping pong where they use a bunch of scare tactics for their base to start, flooding the phones, start flooding the emails, start flooding social media with all of these finger pointing statements instead of actually sitting down, trying to come up with a solution. And so unfortunately, we do have military, we have government workers that are working tirelessly without being paid, but Usually, if not always, they have been paid back. And so it's a temporary setback, which I know it can be devastating for many who are living paycheck to paycheck, but eventually they do end up getting their money back. It's just a really big pain in the side.
Yeah, indeed. I can imagine for them out there. Amy Tarkanian, we covered so much ground there. Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm sure I'll have more for you.
Now, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says there will be no relaxation of visa rules for India as he begins a two-day visit to strengthen trade and cultural ties. He's leading a delegation to Mumbai to promote investment following the new UK-India trade deal. The agreement cuts tariffs on cars, whiskey, textiles and jewellery. The trip also saw a major announcement for the film industry. 3 Bollywood movies will be shot in the UK, and that will be starting next year. For more on this, I'm joined by independent journalist and podcast host Lavina Tandon. Lavina, it's such a pleasure to have you back on the show. Let's start with Keir Starmer. He met with business leaders in Mumbai earlier. Is this trip about diplomacy, or do you think it's more about investment?
Both, Leigh-Ann. It's about diplomacy and about investment, about posturing in the UK, that this deal, they meant business. It's a business, absolutely a business trip that means business. And it is going as a partner, not as a patron, re-establishing and renewing the ties between India and the UK, not as aid but ambitious. So it's very business. The posturing is full business. The way Keir Starmer has gone as the biggest delegation, the way it is covered in India is also that the biggest delegation from Britain is coming to the UK. It's acknowledgement of the fact that India is on the rise. They do need the growth market. The UK needs the growth market and the business and the jobs that it is going to encourage here in the UK. So it's very much a strategic, very much a diplomatic trip that means business, Leigh-Ann.
So he's meaning business on his trip, but the visit follows that landmark trade deal that India and the UK signed in July, and that came 3 years after they started negotiating. So it's a pretty long time. And who benefits the most from this deal, India or the UK? And how vital is this agreement? As you said, they're there for business.
Both. Though each country would say they have done a better job. But if you ask, because the deal has been signed, the intention is there. This whole trip, I think, is to say, now let's have the accountability, let's have the nuts and bolts in place and implement it, because UK needs it and India would also want this to go ahead. So it is, and you can see the posturing, the way it is happening. It went and talked about, immediately got those 3 deals, 3 film deal done, which means that it is saying we mean business. And also, it is an extremely important way to see how it is going about. They've taken people, education and cultural creativity, that kind of sector and coming together is also very, very important. And 14 university heads from the UK are going there. So at this point in time, what UK is saying, we have done the deal. It's taken us so long, almost 20 rounds, 3 to 4 years. Let us implement it. Let us get these tariffs cut. Let us have scotch on the table, Indian dining tables, and let us have the tech and AI and renewable energy, talk about it and do this, have UK as the hub for creative hub, because UK creative industry, though, is great, but has suffered in job losses. And that could, with the diaspora, the immense diaspora and the number of films that were shot here had sort of gone down. They have gone with all these agendas and all these people who can iron it out straight away and have it up and running and going. Like we said, the 3-film deal. And now Yash Raj Studio, which used to be huge and used to shoot many films in the UK. In fact, Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge happened to be one of the biggest blockbusters of India, was shot in London, but they didn't shoot for 8 years. So this, and then football, selling football. So both the countries are selling what they can sell. For example, for the UK, Scotch and cars are a big market. India is a huge growth market that they want to deal with. India wants to come back and get technology exchange and have talk about tech and all of that. So both the markets, and they sell there. The major 2 things from India has been jewelry and textile, and they want to also get that up and running. So both are in a win-win situation, though each country would claim they would have a better deal. But I think it's a deal that would help both the countries.
And it's really interesting because Modi and Starmer will be meeting tomorrow. And when it comes to global issues, we know they have very different positions when it comes to Russia. Will Starmer possibly try and pressure Modi to stop buying Russian oil, as they are desperate to see an end to this war in Ukraine, the Europeans?
I started by saying that this is a deal between partners and not patrons. And the way Starmer is going with Prime Minister Starmer is going with 125 people, posturing business. It is not, and India over a period of time has maintained the fact that the proximity to Russia or buying of Russian oil is a need for the country. So it is not I think there is an understanding, an understatement, which is there, that India is not here to listen to you anymore. We can, of course, take it. If you have a suggestion, you can make it, but we would not kind of accept. It is not a prerogative that, and you can't use it as a lever because it is a deal between equals. UK needs India more in terms of the growth market and the kind of youth that the country has and the demographic dividend that the country has. So I don't think Prime Minister Keir Starmer is going to go as far as saying that don't buy the oil, but it could be that he gestures it by saying, invest in renewable energy. And also looking at the way India is going, they are more into Make in India. Their defense spending vis-a-vis Russia has come down as well. The dependency is slowly coming down. So answer to your question, I don't think it's going to be a leverage that can be had or a suggestion that can be made. But of course, from the sidelines and saying that your dependency could be more in renewables so that the world is a better place, that kind of stuff could happen. But I don't think there's something to say, do this. And it's a partners meeting, not patrons, where one could talk to anybody.
And Lavina, we also just heard Keir Starmer there on his way to India, and he made it very clear there is no relaxation of the visa rules. How do you think this will impact relations, or do you think India maybe expected this stance?
Actually, very interesting. When the FTA was signed, Commerce Minister of India, Piyush Goyal, was here, and I did an exclusive interview with him. And I asked him this very specific question about visa, and he categorically denied, saying that visa is not a concern. Visa is not a key that opens any doors or shuts any door when it comes to FTA. So, but visa or immigration has been constantly been played out in the media as being a key to this deal being implemented or this deal being signed. And the question was answered on similar lines by the foreign secretary who came to Chatham House as well when he was asked. So I think it is not going to be the deciding factor. Also, these things can be done more strategically. For example, the 3 years NI already, which was very controversial here in the UK, has already been agreed. In addition to this, youth schemes could come. So these things could have a backdoor entry, but on the face of it, I do not think that, I think India will rest and not use it too much. In fact, on the face of it, they say that they have never used it. But even now, they will bow down and not make it a kind of hard and fast rule to get anything done. So I don't think visa would play out as much. And many other things like youth schemes and 3 years of NI and all of that can be done to achieve similar things.
Lavina Tandon, it's been brilliant to have you on the show and your analysis and insights. Thank you so much for your time. A reminder of our top stories. US envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner join high-stakes Gaza ceasefire talks as pressure mounts for a breakthrough. French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu presents his plan to Macron tonight, aiming to pass a budget and ease election fears. Visa rules and Bollywood opportunities are on the table as Keir Starmer visits India to boost trade and also investment. And that's all from us on W News. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Of course, follow us on X, and we'll be back in a couple of hours with a W News Extra. Goodbye and thank you.